It's the morning star drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the morning star drive, you know.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tuesday, May 10th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this awesome Tuesday? We've got current news from around the world, looking into the Jewish perspective of Isaiah, and thoughts of the week on the mentality of evangelism. All right, everyone, how are you doing today? It is Tuesday. Monday is in the books, the hardest day of the week. We're ready to push through, get our prayers going, and make sure we put this week's words into action. Hope you guys are really enjoying this week thus far, and thankful for all of you joining us here on the Morning Star Drive. So, let's build the community. Keep liking, keep commenting. Want to hear from you guys and see how you're doing. Got a lot of new people on listening into the Morning Star Drive. And as we're going on 2 years strong, we're at over 560 episodes. Hope you guys have really been enjoying this more than anything else. All right. So let's build the community. All right. So lots of stuff going on. Today, when we go into the Bible word study, we're going to go into the story of Isaiah, but interestingly, we're going to look at it from the Jewish perspective. What do the Jews think of Isaiah? What is their perspective on him? And it's kind of eye-opening because you get to see things that you never saw before. And of course, the Jewish people the Jews will look at the Bible, especially the Old Testament, much more intricately. They know it much better because they study the Old Testament more than anyone else, right? So it's really interesting to see what their perspective on Isaiah is, right? And to get some other inside facts. The mentality of evangelism is a very interesting thing because everyone's thinking about evangelism all the time. Especially people on the front lines. And there's something that I was thinking about a lot too, is what is the proper mentality to have when we evangelize, right? And I hope that it'll be something helpful for a lot of you guys out there also. What is going on around the world? Current news is getting pretty crazy, to be honest, guys. Elections, natural disasters, new leaderships, wars, and possible new wars. Okay, so we'll go into that too when it comes to what's happening with North Korea and South Korea right now. But if you really look at the entire situation, what's going on in Korea and in the world, you get a better idea of why it's such a desperate or extreme time for prayer, where Sunsim gets this message that's like, I will help you, right? I will truly help you. And we can kind of get an idea and see what Sunsim's actually been praying about a lot. And just look at the world news that we do every single day. You'll see that there are some crazy things going on today, going on just in the world. But we'll get into some even more deeper stuff today too. Okay, so I hope that the world news is helping a lot of you guys out also. And for myself, it's so eye-opening for me. Like just looking at, like, say, even the Philippines and the elections going on there. France had their elections too. We have like all like wars and coups d'etats in like Africa, Sri Lanka, in different areas like that, and different countries around the world. And you get to see, wow, this is really, really bad. Like even the mega drought in California. I don't know, guys, but I was looking at some stuff on the internet, like on Instagram and TikTok, and people are talking about the end of the world, right? So it's kind of like, it is like end times things going on. Obviously, we know we know that these are just birth pains of people knowing that it's not the literal end times what the Christianity is thinking, but we know what the end times are talking about. But it's really interesting how people are talking. I just saw a picture today where it's, what was it about? It was the Ukraine, and then the caption was about the time of the flood and people dying, like everyone's dying around the world, something like that. It was really weird, but I was like, people are kind of catching on to something, that God is doing something around the world, even though they're not in Providence. They will realize, yeah, something is happening. And we have to be those that understand it at the deeper level with this prayer condition, what is actually happening at this time. All right. We do have a new talk on Thursday night on the Espresso with Sky channel for your newcomers or for yourself to learn too. And this video is about, why does God keep repeating things in the Bible? That's an interesting one. Why does God keep repeating things in the Bible? So that would be a good one to take a look at, and I hope that a lot of you will benefit from that too. And also remember, Sunday edition this week, we started up again. It's Ines Huing from Germany. Great interview, learning about her journey into this history. She had a cool hoodie on, like the Pravi Life hoodie. So I hope you guys will really enjoy it, and we have more and more people getting ready to do these interviews also. Okay. So let's get this show started on the road. All right. Today's member artists, right? From around the world. The feature artist of the day today is going to be PGY from the Paper Music Associates in Korea, and that song is Wherever. And I'm really hoping that he'll get some more stuff coming out too. I think it's a her, actually. I think it's a her, but I hope more. They'll get more material coming out also. That second song is MC One Love from Australia with The Journey, and this is his journey from being a Gentile to Christianity to Providence. And last but not least, one of the fan favorites right now, because he's new, it's AG from Japan, and that song is Come Down on Me, Holy Spirit, and that's the EDM remix.
달의 연가를 들으며 홀로 도시를 걸었어요. 당신이 없는 이태원은 불빛은 한없이 어두워요. 여기엔 나 말고 아무도 없는 건가요? 아무것도 보이지가 들리지가 않는 거예요. 맞아요, 도시는 지금 텅 비었어요. 심장이 멈추어버린 내 차가운 가슴과 같아요. 눈물이 떨어져 빗물과 하나가 됐을 때 머리를 울리는 당신의 외침이 들려. 나의 이름을 불러. 그러면 내가 너의 옆에 있을게. 부르고 또 불러. 그러면 네가 나의 옆에 있을 거야. 보이지 않는다고 없는 게 아니니까. 아무리 어두워도 내일은 오니까. 태양의 등불은 어디에나 있어줄게. 그러니 울지 마. That I'm compromised. It couldn't be perfect. I wouldn't carry on anymore. I just thought I was insane, that no one could even understand me. It was hard to know how it became like the one from The Little Prince. Where were you, my tiny flare? I know you don't have any fear. I believe in you and the change that I'm going through. 않게
lungs, you're still breathing. There's hope to change, rearrange a new mentality. The word of truth based in reality. Call out to God, the higher power. No Jack Bauer, making life so sweet when it is sour. Saving in the 11th hour. Life's energy was diminished. I felt like I was finished. Battery on empty. Satan trying to tempt me to get reckless with my ways. Let the truth resonate. Don't hesitate. Better things await you. Keep moving forward toward that breakthrough. Through the fire tribulation, new transformation. Be all you can be. Find strength in the Trinity. Holy Trinity holds you down. Picks me up off the ground. I was lost when I met him. I was found. Word up, word up. I was blind but now I see. I was living without hope at the end of my rope. The sound is so dope. I met the Lord's history. Purpose ain't a mystery. I was blind but now I see. I was living without hope at the end of my rope. The sound is so dope. I met the Lord's history. Purpose ain't a mystery. My state was incomplete. Had to bow down at his feet. Seen some dark nights out there on some cold streets. Satan never defeats me where the word and truth are complete. See, it completes me. God, Holy Son, Holy Spirit, complete. Three, completely united with the triune. Enlighten my path. Walk step by step, hand in hand with the Lord. Can't afford to go back, nothing remains. Friends committing suicide, people making bad choices. God hears the broken people's voices. We ride for the Lord, Messiah, Messiah. Riding on the eagle's wings, flying higher, higher. You'll be caught up, raptured. My heart is captured, my spirit has raptured. Used to carry a knife for protection until I met the Lord's affection. Resurrection, crossed from a place of death to new life introspection. Asking what's life's purpose made me nervous, no longer feel dead. I'm in love with the one holding the key to life everlasting. Hear it in your speakers blasting. Gonna get back what Satan stole from me. Do righteousness and hard work. Sick condition. Facing my fears, Trinity hears my petition. Taking action on the word, promises coming to fruition. Rising up to a higher level. You can hear it in the bass, you can hear it in the treble. I was blind but now I see. I was living without hope at the end of my rope. The sound is so dope. I met the Lord's history. Purpose ain't a mystery. I was blind but now I see. I was living without hope at the end of my rope. The sound is so dope. I met the Lord's history. Purpose ain't a mystery.
there it is. That is Come Down on Me, Holy Spirit. That is the EDM remix from AG from Japan. And you go ahead, check out his SoundCloud channel. I believe it's AG at with the, the at symbol, and Soul, which is Sounds of Love. All right. Before that, MC One Love from Australia with The Journey. He is from the Rapture Collective over there with the guys in Australia. And of course, we have PGY from the Paper News Associates in Korea. And that is a feature artist of the day with the song Wherever. All right. So let's get into some news going on around the world. And what are the reasons why we're listening to why we need to know the world news? Well, number one is we'll take a look at it from the way Sunsim sees the world news. And 3 reasons. Number one, you get to see what God is doing. Number 2, you get to see the things you need to report and pray for to God. And last but not least, there are a lot of things that, like terrible things we see happening in the world. And those are the things that we need to comfort God's heart in. So I hope that we can have that same mentality of the Lord while we listen to the world news. So let's start off with some updates going on with the Russia and Ukraine. Fierce battles are continuing in the Donbas region in Ukraine's east, where Russia is pounding areas with artillery. Serious battles are said to be taking place around the towns of Rubizny and Bilohorivka. The town of Popasna fell to Russian forces on Sunday. Odessa is under curfew after repeated missile strikes. A strike on the southern port city earlier forced visiting European Council President Charles Michel to take cover. Earlier, Putin told a huge military parade in Moscow's Red Square that Russian troops were defending the motherland, and he said the invasion of Ukraine is what he calls a special military operation and was provoked by the West. Ukraine's President Zelensky also says Russia can't appropriate victory in World War II, adding, "We won then and we will win now." So here's a quick update on the bombing of the school. Well, school's not in session, but people are hiding out there. 60 people have been confirmed dead after the bomb hits this school. They were killed after a bomb hit a school in East Ukraine, and Zelensky has reported this. And earlier, the governor of Luhansk region said 90 people had been sheltering in the building in Bilorivka, and 30 were rescued. Also, a Russian plane had dropped the bomb. The bomb on the school was dropped on Saturday. Russia has not commented on this. Now, Luhansk has seen fierce combat as Russian troops and separatist fighters seek to surround government forces, and much of the region has been under the control of Russia-backed separatists for the past 8 years. Now, the blast brought down the building, which caught fire, and it took firefighters 3 hours to extinguish, according to the governor writing on Telegram. And he said almost the entire village had been sheltering in the basement of that school. And, of course, we know that the final death toll, we're not really sure yet, but at the moment, it seems like there are 60 dead. Also, Putin says Russia fighting for the motherland in Ukraine in a Victory Day speech. Okay, so there was a big parade that was happening on... It's like this May Day event, right? So those of you guys don't know, it's something that goes to it's May 9th. It's a Victory Day, okay? And this is very important for Russia. It's an annual event, military parade in Red Square in Moscow and cities across Russia on May 9th. Basically, they marked the victory over Nazi Germany in 1945, and under Putin, Victory Day has become a show of strength of troops and military hardware, as well as a chance to remember the sacrifices of World War II. 27 million Soviet citizens died, by far the greatest loss of any country in what Russians call the Great Patriotic War, and this year, the event has taken on a significance of its own. Far from liberating Europe, Russia has waged months of war against its neighbor Ukraine, and is devoid of any real form of military victory that it can celebrate. Now, regiments that played a key role in the war will parade in front of the top brass and the president, whose address will echo across Red Square and be scrutinized for what to expect next. And Russia's leader often uses this moment to send messages of intent. So the Victory Day parade was occasionally marked in the Soviet era and revived by Yeltsin for the 50th anniversary in 1995, but it was Putin in 2008 who made it an annual event featuring military hardware. Russian identity has been largely created with Victory Day in the background, with school books and history books focusing on Russia as Europe's wartime liberators. So he did make a speech at this Victory Day parade, And he basically said that they're fighting for the future of the motherland. And his annual address marks a victory over Nazi Germany in World War II, as we said before. And despite rumors he would make a major announcement, his speech stuck largely to defending Russia's invasion. And he tied the war in Ukraine to victory in 1945, blaming the West and NATO for rejecting security demands. Now, defending the motherland had always been sacred, he said, referring to their eastern region, which is now the main focus of Russia's assault. And he said, he was quoted, "Today you are fighting for our people in Donbass, for the security of Russia, our homeland." He also made unfounded allegations against NATO and Ukraine and described the invasion as a preemptive rebuff. And he was quoted, "They were preparing a punishing operation in Donbass to intrude on our historic lands. In Kyiv, they were saying they might get nuclear weapons, and NATO started exploring the lands close to us, and that became an obvious threat to us and our borders." So there was some speculation that Russia's president may be considering a change in military strategy, either a full declaration of war rather than the current so-called special military operation, or a mobilization of Russian men to boost the armed forces. But instead, he said he was signing a decree for families of the dead and wounded in Ukraine to receive special support. And during a meeting later in the day with the father of a serviceman killed in eastern Ukraine, he said everything was going according to plan and the result will be achieved. There was a minute of silence, including for the fallen in Ukraine, and he ended his 11-minute address with the words, "Glory to our armed forces, for Russia, for victory, hurrah," at which the assembled forces responded with a big cheer. So the parade was more modest than in recent years, and Russia's news agency said about 11,000 troops and 131 armored vehicles took part in the event, including Russia's widely feted Armada tanks, which have not been considered combat ready for the war in Ukraine. So that is kind of the update of what's going on in the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Let's move over to the elections in the Philippines, and it looks like it is Marcos's son, Marcos Jr., is returning with an early lead. So the son of a former dictator of the Philippines has taken an early lead in the country's presidential election. Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. has some 18 million votes against his rival's 8.5 million, an unofficial tally shows. Now, if the landslide is confirmed as opinion polls had predicted, the Marcos clan, ousted by a people's revolt 36 years ago, would reclaim power. Now, his main rival is Leni Robredo, a liberal who is currently the Philippines' vice president, and the process could take days before a winner is officially announced, as was the case in 2016. But pollsters in this campaign have consistently shown the Marcos heir ahead with a commanding 30 percentage point lead, and his running mate is Sara Duterte, a daughter of the incumbent president, a hardliner who has come to the end of his 6-year term in office. Now, polls did close at 7 p.m. local time, and counting started immediately, although in some places voting was extended to account for COVID restrictions and voters still queuing. Now, there have been some ballot issues because there was a high turnout, and the nation's eligible 67.5 million voters, with many lining up pre-dawn on Monday to cast their votes at polling booths at schools and community centers. Now, there have been reports of ballot issues, with some voters at a school in Manila telling the BBC they were having trouble feeding their papers into the counting machines, and others reported they were told to leave their votes with booth officials. So the commissioner, George Garcia, had earlier told the BBC there will always be allegations of irregularities, but there were no significant breaches so far. And he also told reports of violence were minimal and that police are in full control of the situation. And whoever wins Monday's presidential race will take over from Rodrigo Duterte. Mr. Duterte's government has been condemned for its brutality in cracking down on drugs and crime, though the administration has always rejected allegations of wrongdoing. And critics also say democratic institutions have come under attack in his presidency, pointing to the shutdown of Philippines broadcaster ABS-CBN, a channel which, like some other independent media outlets, has angered Mr. Duterte in the past. So Filipinos are not only voting on the president, but also the vice president, senators, lower house legislators, and thousands of lower-ranking officials across the whole archipelago's 7,600 islands. So let's see what the final result will be for that presidency, the vice presidency, and also the lower houses, okay? Last but not least, we're going to go into kind of a little deep dive of the situation in North and South Korea. And basically, this article is kind of titled "From Handshakes to Hostilities: How Dangerous is the Situation in North Korea?" So Kim Jong-un is testing North Korea's weapons with renewed urgency as South Korea prepares to inaugurate a new hardline president. After years of stalemate following failed nuclear talks, tensions on the Korean peninsula are rising. When a nuclear deal between the U.S. and North Korea collapsed in 2019, so did talks between the Koreas. There has been a stalemate ever since. And meanwhile, North Korea has continued to develop its weapons of mass destruction and is once again testing them with alarming frequency. Only this time, the pandemic and now the war in Ukraine mean the eyes of the world have been focused elsewhere. So asked if the government failed, Professor Moon Chung-in is very defensive about this. He says, no, I don't think so. Was there war? And the answer, of course, was there was no war in North or South Korea. And he reasons that for 5 years, the Moon government kept the peace during one of the biggest crises in inter-Korean relations, and it also showed that what incentives would get North Korea to the negotiating table. The problem, he believes, is that North Korean negotiators returned empty-handed in what was a great embarrassment for the regime and almost certainly a punishable offense. So President Moon, the last president, tried everything he could to coax the North Koreans back to talks, but in doing so, he has been accused of appeasing one of the world's most brutal dictators. So frighteningly, little is known about the current situation in North Korea. Its self-imposed coronavirus border closure has stopped people and therefore information from leaving. What is clear is that Kim Jong-un has continued developing nuclear weapons in spite of numerous international sanctions designed to stop him from doing so. His weapons are becoming more sophisticated and dangerous. In March, the regime tested its first intercontinental ballistic missile, an ICBM, for the first time since the summits of 2018 began, and it flew further and for longer than any of its previously tested missiles. But the hugs and handshakes are now over. South Korea has elected a new tough-talking president, a former prosecutor with no prior political experience, and in a recent interview, he described North Korea as the main enemy of the South and has promised to take a hardline approach to its military escalations. He said he'll only talk to his neighbor if North Korea shows it is serious about denuclearization, but most experts now agree that North Korea has zero intention of giving up its nuclear weapons, and they had reached this conclusion long before the war in Ukraine highlighted the perils of relinquishing such weapons, though this certainly has not helped. And this gives Mr. Yoon, the new president, his strategy of zero chance of working, according to consultants of the International Crisis Group, an organization working to prevent wars. Now, during his campaign, Mr. Yoon, the new president, went as far as to say he would launch a preemptive strike on North Korea to destroy its weapons if there were signs the North was about to mount an attack. And this has long been part of South Korea's defense strategy, but it's rarely uttered out loud, as it is a surefire way to enrage the North, which it did. Last month, North Korea paraded its missiles through the streets. In its latest attempted show of strength, Kim Jong-un, dressed in a white military uniform, delivered a blistering warning. Any hostile force that threatened North Korea would cease to exist, and this was interpreted, at least in part, as a warning to the new South Korean president. The North has been developing an array of short-range missiles, which, for the first time last month, it hinted could be used to carry tactical nukes. The sort which could be used against South Korea in a conventional war. There are now signs it is about to test one of these nuclear bombs. Now, these actions shouldn't lead to war, but they could lead to a miscalculation by either side. That is the biggest danger at the moment. So most experts are saying that North Korea's, all their tactics right now are, their main goal is just survival. And of course, there is unease in Seoul about what is coming as North Korea inevitably tests the limits of the new government and tries to claw its way back up the international agenda. And many people are bracing themselves for what is actually going to happen with the North. And the world right now might be looking elsewhere, but North Korea is getting harder and harder to ignore. So that is the situation. And what we're seeing, I believe the new president will come in June. So let's see what's going to happen, because it kind of opens our eyes to what is happening in South Korea right now. and what Sun Team is praying about also. I'm sure that all the people in the military that are high up in the military rankings are asking and reporting to Sun Team what is happening, and it is being prayed about a lot more than anything else. So that is the top 3 news around the world right now. So let's get into the NBA playoffs. We're getting to some sporting news, top 3 news in sports. NBA playoffs just the other day. We had the Philadelphia 76ers tying up the series against Miami, 116-108. The series is now 2-2. James Harden turns back the clock, 31 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists, and Joel Embiid with 24 points and 11 rebounds. Dallas Mavericks also turning out to a great series, defeat the Phoenix Suns 111-101. Chris Paul, their super point god, he fouled out in the beginning of the 4th, and now the series is tied at 2-2. Doncic with 26.7 rebounds, 11 assists, and Devin Booker with 35 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists in a losing effort. So we look at a lot of these series are now tied at 2-2, so it looks like it's turning into a great playoffs. Same with the NHL. NHL's just the same. Carolina took a 2-0 lead, and now just yesterday, it was second game in Boston. Boston defeats Carolina Hurricanes 5-2, and the series is tied at 2-2. St. Louis defeats Minnesota 5-2, and now that series is 2-2. Tampa Bay just crushes Toronto 7-3. That series is 2-2. And then the LA Kings defeated the Edmonton Oilers 4-0. And then that series is once again 2-2. So we have some really good series going on in both the NBA and the NHL. In soccer news, EPL, English Premier League action. Arsenal defeats Leeds 2-1. Everton defeats Leicester 2-1. West Ham defeats Norwich 4-0, and Man City defeats Newcastle 5-0. So what are the standings? Top 4 teams in the EPL get to go to the Champions League. At the moment, it is Man City with 86 points, Liverpool with 83 points. So look at those points, guys. Man City 86, Liverpool 83. So they're only 1 win away from each other, okay? Liverpool's only 1 win away. Chelsea's in 3rd with 67. This is how far Man City and Liverpool is above all the other teams. The next team is almost 20 points below, right? And then Arsenal with 66 points. So at the moment, those 4 will be moving on to the Champions League, but we'll see what happens by the end of the season. In Spain, Atletico Madrid defeats Real Madrid 1-0, but Real Madrid has already locked up the Spanish league, so it's not really a big loss for them. Germany, Bayern Munich, and they finish 2-2, a tie with VfB Stuttgart. And RB Leipzig 4-0 over FC Augsburg. All right, and last but not least, we have France. We have PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. 2-2 with Troyes, and Neymar scores a goal in that one also. So that is the top 3 news in sports. Hope you guys really, you guys enjoyed the sports and the top 3 news around the world, which means we're going to get into the golden time. Yes, it is a time of praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. Hope you guys really enjoy this time too. Get our hearts and minds in a more spiritual zone. We're going to start off with the song Go Higher and Higher, and then we'll listen to Masterpiece, and then we'll end things off with a new one that just came off on PEMD, from IETT, sorry. And that song is With the Truth. All right, so as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time giving praise, honor, and glory to the Holy Trinity.
You are dazzling, led by the Holy Spirit. You are changing in the best way. Look at me, I'm dazzling, led by the word of truth. I know my destiny is changing. Go higher and higher while throwing out my thoughts. Go higher and higher, taking action on His will. Go higher and higher, beyond the limit. That's how I can really truly love myself in the best way. We are transformed. We are awesome for sure. Let's climb the highest heights, go higher and higher.
Don't stop and just keep going.
Transforming, awesomely, go higher. Na 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 na.
Yeah. Look at you, look at me. Everyone is shining. That's the walls that block you and me. With the Lord, we'll break right through them. When we can do no more, the secret is doing more. There are no limits here. We're not with no limit. Don't stop, it just keep going. You changed a lot, so gotta keep growing. Started from the bottom, now we're going to the highest. The Lord, He takes me to the Trinity.
Rise up all the rest, go high. Changing for the best, go high. Rise up all the rest, go high. Changing for the best, go high. higher and higher while throwing out my thoughts. Go higher and higher, taking action on His will. Go higher and higher, beyond the limit. That's how I can really truly love myself in the best way. Rehab, 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 rehab transformed. We are awesome for sure. Let's climb the highest heights, go higher and higher.
Don't stop and just keep going.
Transforming, awesomely. We have transformed. We are awesome for sure. Let's climb the highest heights, go higher and higher.
Don't stop and just keep going.
Transforming, awesomely. Go high. Rise above the rest.
Go high.
Changing for the best.
Go high.
Rise above the rest.
Go high.
Changing for the best.
Go high.
Rise above the rest.
Go high.
Changing for the best.
Go high.
Rise above the rest.
Go high.
Transforming, awesomely, go higher.
You are like a tree, uniquely made with rare qualities. Thoughts are your roots, foundation of every action you do. Christ is the rock, rooted deep in Him, you will never fall. You'll reap as much as you sow, you'll bear fruit only if you make yourself great, make yourself grand, put in the effort, produce and enhance. Make yourself pure, make yourself clean, always repent like you're pruning dead leaves. Make yourself known, make yourself seen. They'll call you beautiful, valuable, a masterpiece. Uproot the weeds, your gates of love will guard you from thieves. Like a pine tree, don't ever change, remain evergreen. You'll reap as much as you sow, you'll bear fruit only if you make yourself great, make yourself grand, put in the effort, produce and enhance. Make yourself pure, make yourself clean, always repent like you're pruning dead leaves. Make yourself known, make yourself seen. They'll call you beautiful, valuable, a masterpiece. When the seasons change, hardships, wind and rain, those with deeply rooted faith will surely remain. When the spring comes, they will blossom. Make yourself great, make yourself grand, put in the effort, produce and enhance. God's masterpiece. The light of truth is shining on me. I see my spirit's face shining so bright. The light of truth is renewing my heart. It's guiding me towards blessings and grace. This is the only path, and I'm surely on it. I see God waiting for me. All I've gained, I've gained through the truth. Everlasting life, everlasting love. All I've gained, I've gained through the truth. Rapture of my spirit, my life as a bride. Jehovah's great light. The light of truth has conquered the world, and every other word is put to rest. The light of truth fulfilled in history. The greatest will of God has been fulfilled. This is the only path, and I'm surely on it. I see God waiting for me. Jehovah's great light, His great light shines on me. His shining light, Jehovah's great glory shines so bright. His glory shines eternally. Jehovah's great light shines so bright. His brilliant eternal light, glory shines down.
Even if all disappears, God's perfect will lasts eternally. Jehovah's glorious light shines in this land, and we finally see that our dreams are fulfilled. Now we will shine for eternity, lighting the world with the truth, with the word that we preach. The word makes everything possible. A happy future is possible. Fixate characters possible. Now we will rapture impossibly high. We have gained everything, this path of truth. Always the word of truth, eternal word of truth.
We can do anything through truth. With the word we can win for sure. God's word flows on without end. So as we act, we will take flight and see miracles. All I've gained, I have gained through the truth. Everlasting life, everlasting love. All I've gained, I have gained through the truth. Rapture of my spirit, my life as a bride. All I've gained, I have gained through the truth. Everlasting life, everlasting love. All I've gained, I have gained through the truth. Rapture of my spirit, my life as a bride.
And there it is. That is that new song from IETT. That song is With the Truth. What a great, great song. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. Before that was Masterpiece, and of course, Go Higher and Higher. All right, so now that we got this, the spiritual time of praise and worship out of the way, it's time for us to get into the word study for today. And of course, every single Tuesday, we are going over scriptures, Bible stories, especially what it has to do with this week's message. And of course, this week's message, the scriptures all come from Isaiah. Now, we have done already some historical background on the story of Isaiah and the book itself. So today I want to try something different, something new, which is what do the Jewish people, because the Jewish people have been studying the Old Testament for millennia. Right? They've been studying it inside out. A lot of them have to memorize the first 5 books of the entire, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. They have to memorize it word for word. All right. So they are very, very into studying and understanding the scriptures itself. So we're going to take a look at the Jewish perspective of Isaiah and who he was. Okay, so we're going to first take a look at who is this Isaiah from the Jewish perspective, and there are going to be some interesting things that we're going to look at that will make us understand even better about who Isaiah is, okay? So one thing we do know first is he is of the royal Davidic dynasty, okay? So he comes from royal blood, and he became one of the most preeminent prophets of Israel during the first Jewish Commonwealth. So he's a son of the prophet Amos, and nephew of the Judean king Amaziah. Now, he was uniquely positioned to serve as an effective prophet of God, unintimidated by royalty and able to extend rebuke when necessary. Okay, so how does that make any sense? We're going to get into a little bit more deeply how, him being from the royal family makes him more effective as a prophet. All right, and this is something that, I never really thought about until I was reading it here. So first, the thing about Isaiah. So there's prophets like Elijah and Elisha, other great prophets that preceded Isaiah, but he does stand out as one of the most prominent in Jewish history. The book of Isaiah comprises of 66 chapters, which is the largest of all prophetic works in the biblical canon, and his words are cited extensively, not only in Jewish culture, but even by Jesus, right? So the Talmud, the Midrashic works, the New Testament, even the New Testament quotes Isaiah more than any other prophet in the Old Testament. Now, sages, right? And we're talking about the Jewish culture. There's sages, the people who teach the scriptures. They teach that Isaiah was privy to a most sublime level of prophecy, and his visions were communicated at a level and frequency that resulted in his gaining a sense of serenity, such that he was less excitable about the experience. So what do you mean less excitable? Right? How could he be less excitable about these experiences of receiving prophecies and visions from God? Okay, so this is how the Jewish people compare him. So you compare it to someone who resides in the capital city, who's accustomed to seeing the king and his entourage on a regular basis. And although he's near the king, being in the king's presence does not elicit this rapturous reaction, right? Because he sees the king all the time. Now, other prophets like Ezekiel, where were they from? They were from remote villages who rarely have the opportunity to see the king. So can you imagine the difference when you look at the difference of someone seeing the king in the city who's from the royal family compared to someone from a remote village who rarely sees the king? It says because of that, Isaiah's experiences, his reaction upon seeing the king is not going to be like Ezekiel, who sees the king in a great excitement and exuberance, but since he was someone who was always in the presence of the king, it was less excitable to him. Okay, so that's quite interesting if you think about it that way. It's like, wow, that makes sense. Which also, if you think about this, because he's from a royal line of King David, why does it make him more fitted to be a prophet? Right? As we talked about before, an effective prophet is because he's not intimidated by royalty, because he is royalty. He has no problems rebuking the kings. He has no problems rebuking the people in the high class and the high places, because he's from that level. He's from that generation. He's from a royal Davidic line. Okay? So when you look at Isaiah, his spiritual stature and prophetic qualities, they say the Jews rivaled his spiritual stature and prophetic qualities with Moses. That's how big they see Isaiah. Both Moses and Isaiah comprehended the subject of their prophecy during its transmission, right? And this is explained, this is what the Jewish think, and explained in something called the Midrash, which is like a classical collection of the sages' teachings on the Torah, right? So in the Midrash, right, these sacred, the collection of sages' teachings on the Torah, they say that Moses and Isaiah were very, very at a similar level. Right? Some Jewish mystical works teach that Isaiah shared the same soul as Moses and therefore suffered from a speech impediment. And according to some sources, his lifespan also paralleled Moses of 120 years. So Isaiah displayed remarkable humility and self-sacrifice when called upon to serve as God's emissary. And although the Jews had previously spurned prophet-delivered divine messages, often like subjecting the prophets to torture and death, Isaiah responded to God's call with joy, saying, basically saying to God, "Hey, I'm here, send me," right? So this is kind of like how good Isaiah was. He was considered the positive prophet. So Isaiah was recognized as a true lover of Israel, and he took pains to find merit on behalf of Israel and sought to justify their actions. So his righteousness and selflessness before God earned him the merit of foretelling the abundant good that will be extended to the Jewish people during the final redemption, and the profundity of the divine consolation they will experience after their long and difficult exile. So the Hebrew name for Isaiah, it's Yeshaya, right? And it basically connotes, it says salvation of God, right? So, and it was Isaiah who conveyed God's message of hope and deliverance for all time. So the book of Isaiah from the Talmud is consolation in its entirety, right? While Moses chastised the people saying, "And you will be dispersed among the nations," Isaiah foretold, and his message was, "And it shall come to pass on that day that those lost in the land of Assyria, those exiled in the land of Egypt shall come back." So Isaiah's prophecies carry a predominantly positive message within whose tapestry is interwoven stern warnings of the impending destruction of the temple, but even his prophecies containing ominous messages allude to consolation as well. So Isaiah tried to couch his messages in terms that could be absorbed by the people. And when he prophesied the good that awaited the righteous and the darkness that would befall the evil, the Jews asked, "What is holding back the arrival of the good? When will the morning arrive?" And of course, Isaiah would answer, "As soon as you desire it, God is willing." So, what is withholding it? They kept pressing Isaiah, and Isaiah said, "Teshuvah," right? And basically is your heartfelt return to God. So the positive influence of Isaiah's prophecies reverberated well beyond his lifetime, and the sages teach that they neutralized to some degree all the ominous prophecies about the temple's destruction delivered by Jeremiah many years later. Right? So when you look at the book of Isaiah, we know that he's got some great prophecies, especially about the Lord's second coming. So you guys could take a look at that also. And when it comes to, like, say, Assyria, for years, Isaiah prophesied that God would send an invader to the Jewish people as retribution for their sins. And finally, during the kingship of Hezekiah, it came to pass. Sennacherib, king of Assyria, invaded the land of Israel. He swept through the kingdom of Judah, conquering every fortified city until he reached Jerusalem and laid siege to it. Now, inside Jerusalem, the mood was definitely dark, and the king Hezekiah was inclined to listen to his advisors and surrender. However, Isaiah exhorted him not to surrender and said God would protect him. And then that night, the entire Syrian army was miraculously annihilated in the span of only a few hours, and the situation went from bleak to bright, just as Isaiah had foretold. And of course, we know the story involving Hezekiah's health. Very, very well-known episode, right, involving the prophecy of Isaiah. Conveys the important principle governing prophecy in general, that God may suspend a negative prophecy if humankind responds to it with repentance, which is a great thing, right? He will suspend it. It's going to happen, but it will be suspended, right? So this shows that, even when God prophesies, it can be suspended, can be changed, right? So the Talmud relates that King Hezekiah became deathly ill and inquired of Isaiah as to the reason for his predicament. And Isaiah informed him that he was to die for failing to adequately procreate. When Hezekiah protested that he had done so to avoid having evil progeny, a fate he had portended through prophetic vision, Isaiah chided him, saying, "Why do you involve yourself with the secrets of the Holy One? Blessed be he. One must perform his obligations to God and allow God to do as he decides." Okay? So when King Hezekiah asked Isaiah for his daughter's hand in marriage, Isaiah informed him that the decree of his death had already been issued and was now irreversible. So Hezekiah dismissed Isaiah's conclusions, contending that even if a sharp sword rests upon a person's neck, one should not prevent himself from praying for mercy, and one may still hold out hope that his prayers will be answered. So Hezekiah prayed and was granted many more years of life. He married Isaiah's daughter, and their son Manasseh ultimately inherited the throne of Judah, and as feared, Manasseh perpetrated some of the darkest evils imaginable, right? So when you look at Isaiah, many of Isaiah's hopeful and uplifting messages have been captured in the collective liturgy of the Jewish people and enshrined in our daily prayers. And it's customary in many communities to conclude each of the daily prayers with these words uttered by Isaiah. And in Jewish community, they utter these words: "They contrive a scheme, but it will be foiled, conspire a plot, but it will not materialize, for God is with us." And it kind of goes with this week's message too, right? So during the Purim episode, Jewish children who had committed these words to memory proclaimed them before Mordecai when he inquired as to what they had studied. And when asked by Haman, so we know the story of Esther, right? "What have those children told you that you find so amusing?" Mordecai answered, "They have brought me good tidings." So Isaiah's call for the Jewish people to return to God, for the wicked to abandon their evil path, and for the people to seek out God when he is close is a mainstay of the Haftarah that is read on all public fast days, and it speaks to the glorious time to come when all the nations of the earth will recognize God as the ultimate sovereign and seek his teachings as they emanate from Jerusalem, right? Very, very interesting. The words of Isaiah's vision of peace among the nations are emblazoned upon buildings and edifices the world over, allowing humankind to dare dream of better times, right? And basically that's like Isaiah chapter 11, where it talks about the animal kingdom. So at the end, of course, Isaiah's death, the wicked king Manasseh, right, or Manasseh, right, that would be the one, that would be the pronunciation we would know as Manasseh. But the wicked king in Jewish, we call him Manasseh, not we, but that's how the Jews call him, alleged that Isaiah's prophecies were in stark contradiction to the teachings of Moses and amounted to heresy. So under this pretext, he had Isaiah put to death. And due to his premature passing, Isaiah was deprived of the opportunity to transcribe his prophecies, as most prophets did before their death. Instead, King Hezekiah's aides, inspired by his teachings, committed them to writing. So according to some sources, Isaiah was buried in the old city of Jerusalem as an exception to the rule, barring burial of the dead in Jerusalem, right? So that is kind of the story or the perspective of Isaiah from Jewish people. Right, so this is kind of interesting when you guys take a look at it from the Jewish perspective, and they do have some insights and things that we never really thought about. For instance, how is he an effective prophet? Well, because he came from the royal line of David, he had no problems rebuking the king and other people like this, right? And we see that they actually looked at him as someone almost equal to Moses, which is quite shocking because Moses was like basically the Messiah of the Old Testament time, especially to the Jewish people. So, and they also looked at him as a positive prophet, and his messages were more hopeful than anything else. All right. So that is the story of Isaiah from the Jewish perspective and from the writings that they have made. So I hope it's something that kind of opened our eyes a bit more to what the Jewish people, the Old Testament thought of Isaiah is. Okay, so that is the word study for today. I hope you guys really enjoyed that and it inspires us even more. Even though it's a long book, I hope it inspires us more to read the book of Isaiah. Okay, so let's get into the song of choice for today. And of course, every single Tuesday is going to be Korean artists. And I'm picking an old school song way back in the 90s. My brother bought their CD. This is the first time I ever heard of them. The song is from a group called Jinyushan, and they're like a hip-hop group. And when you listen to it, you can tell it's really, really old school, old style. But they're called Jinushan because one of the guys' name is Sean and the other guy is Jinu. So it's Jinushan, right? And this song is featuring Jung-hwa, and she was super famous way back then. This song is called 말해줘. 말해줘. 말 is speak. 해줘 means to do. Please speak. Like say something, right? So I hope you guys enjoy this old school Korean hip hop. This is Jinushan with Jung-hwa with the song 말해줘.
이제는 그만 난 네 걱정보다 더 큰 사랑인 거야 다짐을 잡고 받는 너의 의심 앞에서도 난 그렇게 몇 번씩이나 약속했어 이렇게 나는 너에게 네 약속했어 있는데 뭘 어떻게 나 더 이상 하겠어 나 이제 받아주면 좋겠어
답답해 더 갑갑해 나 어떻게 해야 너를 이해시킬 수가 있을지를 그렇게나 생각해 하루에도 몇 번씩은 심각해 내 사랑은 너무 약속했어 울고 있어 나의 가슴 속에서 너 없이 아무런 의미 없는 날의 반복 속에 난 이제 받아주면 좋겠어
아무리 뭐라 해도 말로 설명할 수 없는 그런 것이었어 너에게 빠져버린 내게는 서로 사랑하는 그런 생각밖에는 떠오르지 않았어 언제나 머릿속에 널 그렸어 나는 그랬어
하지만 시간은 새처럼 날아가버리고 괴로움의 나날이 시작됐고 너는 날 점점 의심하고 난 그 마음을 돌리고 싶고 너를 내 품에 항상 담아두고 1999년 끝나까지도 곁에 있겠어 아직 모르겠어 You and me forever 나 약속하겠어
이미 날 모든 것을 주었잖아
언제나 말했잖아
그렇지만 너는 듣고 있지 않잖아 나를 믿어줘 감싸줘 나를 이제 네 안에서 자유롭게 불어줘 난 안아줘 불러줘 받아줘 내게 이제 네 안에서 자유롭게 기대줘
하늘에서 보내준 우리 사랑을
이룰 수 없다면 만날 수 없다면
나는 그 아픔으로 미쳐버릴 거라면
알 수 있겠니? 오 그렇다면
이제 그만 말아줘 나의 사랑을
나 잃어버린 나의 사랑을
내 마음속 깊은 보석 같은 사랑을
네 앞에 있는 여기 나의 사랑을
Is Jinushan from Korea with the song 말해줘, which is similar to like say something, and that's featuring Jung-hwa. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. For me, it just brings me back to old school Korean K-pop. But tell me what you guys think. Have any of you even heard of Jinushan? That was way back in the past, and they were one of the popular groups way back when for hip-hop, and there wasn't many groups that did hip-hop anyways, but good memories. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. All right, so that leads us into the final segment for today's podcast, and of course, every single Tuesday, we have the thoughts of the week, and today I want to talk about the mentality of evangelism. And of course, I have different subjects and topics topics I talk about all the time, whether it's leadership, organization, whatever it is. But now, as churches are starting to get more into the groove of how things are working, we want to get into evangelism starts to become, come to the forefront, where people are going to go out and start to meet people and evangelize, lecture, and do all these other different things too. And we're kind of slowly getting back into it. And, especially when it comes to people of faith, whether it's Christian or Providence, evangelism is one of the key matters in our life of faith. It is so big and important. And you can, just look throughout the messages, how much Sunsteam talks about it. So much about evangelism, how great it is just to save one life, how God sees it. Even in the Bible, it's like, if you save one person from the evil of their ways, then it covers over a multitude of sins. Like, that's how big evangelism is. Like, even for me, I'll tell you that one story, 2014, I helped evangelize. I taught a lecture to this one person. They passed. Sunsteam, I didn't even ask. Sunsteam just wrote a letter and said, your sins are forgiven. I was just like, right? That's how big it is, right? And not only just Sunsteam, Jesus talks about it too. Jesus talks about it in the Great Commission. I think it's Matthew 28. This is the last thing Jesus said before he went up into heaven was, spread the gospel to the ends of the earth. So we all know the importance of evangelism, right? It is huge. And what I notice is, what happens is, instead of understanding the importance and value of evangelism itself, what happens is, especially when evangelism is not going well, we become a bit desperate, right? We become desperate for evangelism, and it makes people focus more on the person they are evangelizing more than evangelism itself. Okay, so what does that mean? They're focusing too much on the person, right? So I'm going to give you 3 tips today on the mentality of evangelism. Number 1 is never be desperate about evangelizing a single person, like desperation, right? So what happens is, when people begin to focus on, we have to evangelize this person, you become desperate, you get upset at people, you're trying to convince people, we got to evangelize, come on, help me evangelize this person, don't you guys love like whatever it is. The focus changes from looking to God, right? Asking God, looking to God, and trying to understand who this person is, and are they someone who is ready to be evangelized, or are we forcing evangelism because we're so desperate? You become so desperate. Now, and you might think to yourself, well, can we force evangelism? Well, Sunsteam does say that part of our responsibility is, like when Sunsteam talks about picking fruit, right? It says, in the same way, if you evangelize too early, right, you kind of push them too much, then it's like picking a fruit when it's not ripe. It's hard. It doesn't taste sweet at all. It's sour, right? And in the same way, you can wait too long, and then it's like a fruit that's picked when it's rotten already. So it's like, well, but how can we tell the difference? And that's why it's about looking to God, right? Evangelism is not about, we have to evangelize this person that I met. It's not about that, right? It's more about, the focus has to switch, right? And what I see, you'll see this happen with groups of, with like people that are evangelizing together. And I've experienced this a couple times where just people are sometimes one person is so focused on a single person, but then the others, like who are helping and doing and working together, they don't feel that the person is ready. There's a big difference, right? That one person feels they're ready and they're so focused on the one person and the other people don't. And it actually causes a division. It causes a rift between members because instead of the focus of understanding the value and how important evangelism is, it switches to looking only at that single person, right? So in the end, we got to think about this is no one really knows about each newcomer and which one of them is going to pass. We don't, right? And there's no guarantee of any single person, right? So it's like, well, then if we can't know this, so another question will come up. People will ask me, well, if there's no guarantee of who's going to get evangelized and we can't tell the difference, then shouldn't we just put our whole life into evangelizing that one person, right? Because that's a good question that comes up, right? The first thing I said is, never be desperate or too frantic about evangelizing this single person, right? But then if I tell you that there's no guarantee, we don't know who's going to be evangelized, right? Then it's going to be like, well, then if we don't know, shouldn't we be focused on that one person until we know? And that leads me to my second tip. Remember, our mentality is we are choosing a person for God. We are introducing this person to become the counterpart of God. which means it's not about getting everyone in the world. It's not. It's not about finding, it's not about just getting anyone who wants to. It's about finding the people who are ready and qualified, right? Even God too, when he chooses a central figure, he looks at their heart and he chooses those people with the right character, right? Chooses the heart, right? People who are ready, what does that mean? It's not about people who are willing to listen. Those are two different things. Just because someone's willing to listen does not mean they're ready. Two different things. So when we think about this, I know that for people who evangelize a lot, like I know I did a lot in the past, it's tough enough. It's hard enough to get a person just to listen to the word. It's true, right? It's true. And this is why sometimes we get a bit desperate or like we get like frantic about this evangelism. But it's far different from getting someone to realize, right? Getting someone to listen, someone can just be a good salesman, right? Someone who talks really well can get someone to listen, but that's different. That's completely different, right? Than someone who is ready. So when God looks at someone's heart, when you look at the central figure lesson, there are a couple things that really matter. And of course, it has to do with character and how much they value the word in God and how much they put the words of God into action. And this is something that we have to constantly do, right? When it comes to us evangelizing someone. God is looking at the heart. He's looking at character, which means that sometimes we get this magical view of a newcomer because they're studying and we overlook the bad character or the bad tendencies, or we say, oh, come on, well, I never had good character too when I came. But it kind of makes us not, the character all of a sudden becomes less important because we're just trying to evangelize them to say we evangelized. What is their character like? You know, how much do they value the word? How much do they value listening to the word and then actually putting it into action? And those are some of the three things that we have to look at when it comes to, is someone ready? Because just what if someone's got terrible character? What if someone doesn't value the word, or they're just doing it because of something else, or they were just convinced? Or how many times have we seen it where someone seems like, oh my gosh, if we don't evangelize well, then all of a sudden slanderers come into play, right? These people who, we shouldn't have evangelized, or these people who weren't even ready, but we kind of push them into it, and all of a sudden they become these people that eventually leave and slander more than anything else. And that's something we do have to think about. There are mistakes that are made along the way. And more important than saying, I evangelized this person this year, it is more about God. Like, imagine you evangelize someone who starts at, look at those 5-6 people that are slandering right now in Korea. How embarrassing or how shameful people might think to themselves, oh my gosh, I'm the one that evangelized this person. Compared to, imagine you're the one who evangelized Pastor Joan. Can you imagine the difference in how you feel? Would you still say, oh, even though that person's slandering, but at least I evangelized someone? No, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I evangelized that person, right? Remember, the second kind of tip is you are choosing the counterpart for God, which means we have to look at character. We have to look at how much they value the word in God, how much they put the words into action. We have to have some type of basis in order for us to see if this person is ready. And I'm telling you guys right now, I talked about this before, sometimes people are still baking in the oven. They need a little bit more time. And if they need a little bit more time, what I'm saying is, yes, they need a little bit more time. And this is why we need more events rather than just Bible study. We need events where people can come weekly so they can bake in the oven and change a bit more. But you got to understand how hard it is to really receive and accept this history. It can be shocking to some people that they become slanderers. It can be shocking to some people who are complaining all the time or whatever it is, right? And we have to realize we're choosing a person for God, his counterpart. We're not just choosing anyone. Remember this, people who are ready is not the same as people who are willing to listen to the word. Two different things, okay? And last thing I would like to tell you as a tip for evangelism, the mentality of evangelism. If evangelism is not working well, then change the method. You got to have that mentality. And there's two types of changes we need. Number one is internal, and next one is external. We'll start with external first. External is basically no one's coming, right? Which means your events, the way you do things, doing a survey, going out, if no one's coming, right? If you have an event and no one comes, you got to change the event, right? Either change the event or things, or the types of event or the organization of an event. Right? For instance, the marketing. That makes a difference. Marketing changes so many, how you market the event you're doing. And then even if newcomers come, how professional the event is and how to run the event, how organized is the event, where they come in, they're like, wow, this is so amazing. So the types of events, how you organize the event, how to run it, how professional it is, how the marketing works. Like, if you're not getting people coming, then you got to change the event itself. If you're constantly just doing, hey, it's Friday night Bible talks and no one comes, then you got to change to something else. And if all these spiritual things are happening, events are happening and no one's coming, you got to change it maybe to something more philosophical or even physical, right? And that's something we have to think about, the changing of the method. And the second one is internal. What do you have to change the method? Internal basically means you. Sometimes it's not the event, it's just you. Right? It's how you lecture, the skill of your lecturing, how you manage, how you talk to people, how your evangelism skill is, right? Those are things that are not being improved, are not doing that much greater, and that's why it becomes that much more difficult. The events are fine, people are coming, but no one's able to connect them. No one's able to lecture them. No one's able to manage them. That's a big problem, and that's something that we really, really have to think about at that level is, wait, if it's not working well, we're not getting that many people, the event has to change, right? And if the event is okay and people are still coming, or the organization of the event, how to run it, professional marketing, and last but not least, I think this is the most important one, it's about you. Because if you have refined your tools and your skills, then when you go meet people, even one-on-one, you're gonna have far better chance of finding the right people, right? Upgrade and change your lecturing skills, your lecturing programs, your management skills, upgraded management methods, your evangelism methods and skills. Those things also have to change just as much, right? And I hope it's something that, these are the 3 tips I was going to give you about the mentality of evangelism. And I hope it's something that we really, really start to think about more deeply, right? What are the 3 tips today? Number 1 is never be desperate for evangelism and focus on a single person. Right? It's not about the single person. We have to understand the value and importance of evangelism itself, but not, I need to evangelize this person right now. Second one is evangelism is choosing God's counterpart, which means we have to see, are they ready? Being ready is not the same as someone willing to listen to the word, right? Look at character. Look at how much they value the word in God and how much they put the word into action. Last but not least, your methodology. How do you evangelize? If evangelism is not working, change the way you have your events, change the way you organize your events. And then secondly is change yourself, the methods and your skills of lecturing, management, evangelism, or all these other different ways and things you do, prayer skills too, right? So I hope this is something that helps you guys out when it comes to the mentality of evangelism, and something that you guys can put into your thoughts and how you also run things too. Okay, so that is the end of this final segment. This is the thoughts of the week on the mentality of evangelism. I hope it helps you guys out, which means we've come to the end of today's podcast. Hope you guys really enjoyed it just as much as I have. Everyone, have an amazing and awesome Tuesday, and we'll see you guys tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly, so let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this.